In today's video, we're going to be looking at inflation and appreciation. We're going to go through a few examples, but firstly, I want to go through how inflation is important in terms of investments. Inflation is a term used to describe a general increase in prices over time that effectively decreases the purchasing power of a currency. Inflation can be measured by the inflation rate, which is an annual percentage change of the Consumer Price Index, CPI. The compound interest formula is used to calculate the price of items after inflation is added, and we're going to go through a few examples of this. Inflation affects our lives because it increases the cost of items such as food, utilities, and houses. The increase in prices is usually counterbalanced with an increase in wages, but this is not always the case. If wages remain unchanged and prices increase due to inflation, the consumer is actually paying more in relative terms for certain items. Inflation needs to be taken into account when analysing profits, losses, and wage increases over a period of time. In this example, we're going to see how wages can be affected by an inflation rate. So it says the current average full-time adult weekly wage is $1,516. Calculate the average weekly wage in 5 years' time if the average inflation of 2.1% per annum is added to wages for the next 5 years. So as we talked about in the introduction, we're going to be using our compound interest formula. So we're going to now look at certain values that we can take out of the question to be able to substitute back into this formula. So first is the time period. If we look, it's 5 years, and if we look at our interest rate, the inflation is added yearly. So our N just equals 5. R is our rate of inflation, but as we know with the compound interest formula, it needs to be written in a decimal, not as a percentage. So we've got to divide it by 100, so it is actually 0.021. And the last is our present value, which is $1,516. So we're now going to substitute these values back into the formula. So if FV equals 1,516, open bracket, 1 plus 0.021 to the power of 5. And once we calculate that, we get $1,682.01. So in 5 years, the average weekly wage will be $1,682.01. So you can see how we can use the compound interest formula to be able to calculate what a future wage would be if it's increased due to inflation. Second example says an investment property is purchased for $300,000 and is sold in 3 years later for $320,000. If the average annual inflation is 2.5% per annum, has this been a profitable investment? You can see that there is actually an increase in value in the 3 years of about $20,000. However, the question is asking, is this relative to the increase in inflation over the 3 years? So again, we're going to use the compound interest formula to be able to calculate this. So firstly, we're going to find our present value, which is $300,000. Next is our rate, so 2.5%, but we need it in terms of a decimal. So we're going to divide by 100, which will give us 0.025. And lastly, our time period is 3, because it's 3 years. Now, what we're actually going to do is calculate what the investment property should be sold for in 3 years' time due to inflation. So we're actually trying to predict what it will be in 3 years by using the compound interest formula. So the first thing we're going to do is substitute these values back into this formula. So the present value is 300,000, open bracket, 1 plus 0.025 to the power of 3. So once calculated, we get $323,067.19 rounded to 2 decimal places. So what we should be getting in 3 years is $323,067.19. However, what it was actually sold at was $320,000. As you can see, it was not profitable. we actually lost out on almost $3,000. Using the inflation, we can actually compare whether the actual selling price that we got after 3 years was in relation to what inflation should be. So we've been able to predict that it should be $323,000. However, it was only sold at $320,000. So no, it was not profitable in terms of inflation. The next aspect that we're going to be looking at is appreciation. So certain assets, such as antiques and classic cars, increase in value over time. This is known as appreciation. The opposite of appreciation is depreciation. And as a general rule, assets that have a finite useful life decrease in value. And we'll look at that in another video. Assets may appreciate in value due to demand or to changes in inflation or interest rates. Similar to inflation calculations, the compound interest formula is used to calculate the appreciated value of assets. We're going to go through a few examples now. So it says a piece of antique jewellery appreciates at 3.5% per annum. If its current value is $4,500, calculate its value in 4 years' time. Write your answer correct to the nearest cent. So again, we're going to go through the question and take out some important information that we can then substitute into our compound interest formula. The first is the time period, which is 4. R is our rate, so it's 3.5 in the question, and that's a percentage. And we just got to convert that to a decimal by dividing by 100. So that's 0.035. And the present value of the piece of jewellery is $4,500. So all we're going to do now is substitute all of those values into our compound interest formula. So present value is 4,500, open bracket 1 plus our rate in decimals to the power of 4, which is our time period. So what we're going to do now is if we calculate it, we should get $5,163.85. So in 4 years' time, due to appreciation values, the antique jewellery will be worth $5,163.85 in 4 years' time, whereas now currently it's only worth $4,500. So using the compound interest formula, we can calculate effects of inflation as well as appreciation in terms of value of certain items.